In today's lesson, we're going to talk about volume. In previous lessons and previous grades, maybe in 5th grade, you talked about volume of a rectangular prism. And those measurements for volume had whole numbers. This time we're going to have fractions. So it's going to take it a little bit to a higher level. And we're going to be using the little cubes that go inside are going to have fraction lengths also. So it's going to be a little bit more complex, but I think that we can handle it at this point. Okay, let's take a look at our first example. And there's going to be a lot of visualization going on. I don't have cubes or dice or anything that is actually the exact size that we need. Okay, so it says a box with the same dimensions as the prism is the opening exercise, which we haven't done, so we're going to skip that part, will be used. Okay, so there's a prism, and or a box, it's a prism, and it's going to be used to ship miniature dice whose size lengths have been cut in half. The dice are a 1/2 inch by a 1/2 inch by a 1/2 inch cubes. So you have little cubes that are a 1/2 inch tall, a 1/2 inch wide, and a 1/2 inch long. So little dice that are 1/2 inches. How many dice of this size can fit in the box? Well, here's the box that they're going to be shipped in. And we want to know how many dice are going to fit in there. The dice have these dimensions. Well, let's take a look. In grade 5 or in 5th grade, you were able to find the volume of this box. And we know, I'm going to put up here at the top, we know that the formula for volume is length times width times height. Okay, so we could take 10 times 4 times 6 and find the volume of this box. We don't want to find the volume of the box. We want to know how many dice are going to fit inside. So that's where we're going. Okay, so let's see. If they're 1/2 inch each, let's say it was 1 inch here. So here's my 1 inch, let's pretend. And how many dice can fit in the 1 inch there, across there? Well, I think 2 of them. Because if we have a 1/2 inch and a 1/2 inch, that'll equal the 1 inch. Because it's a 1/2 inch across. Now, well, that's cool. You can see my little shadow there. Now, if it's a 1/2 inch across, then that would be 2 for every inch. So if there are 10 inches and we have 2 for each inch, I believe there are 20 in the length. So the length is going to have 20 dice. Could go right along here. And then how many could go this way? Well, let's see. If there's a 1/2 inch for each one, 2 of them for every inch, so 2 times 4, there would be 8 going, 8 going across this way. So you'd have 20, and then you'd have 8. So along the width, there would be 8 dice. And then how many layers of 8 by 20 are there? Well, that's going to tell us how many can stack up this way. Well, if a 1/2 inch up, and a 1/2 inch up, that's 1 inch. 1/2 inch, that's 4 of them. That's 2 inches. And then a 1/2 inch and a 1/2 inch, that's 3 inches. So 2 for every inch, that would be 12 going this way. So our length, there's going to be 20 of them. Our width, there's going to be 8 of them. And for the height, there's going to be 12 of them. To figure out how many can fit inside here, we need to take this many times this many times this many. And now we're not finding the volume of the box. We're using these numbers to tell us how many dice are going to be in there. So we're going to take 20 times 8 times 12. Because we're still using length times width times height for the volume, how many can fit in that box. Okay, I'm going to use my handy dandy calculator because it's going to be a whole lot easier. So let's take 20 times 8 times 12, and we get 1,920 dice in that one box. 1,920 dice. Dice. 1,920 dice can fit in that box. Okay, and we did that based on our visualizing the 1/2 inch across. So in 1 inch, there could be 2 dice sitting there. And so in 10, we could have 2 for every one of those, so we have 20, and so forth. Okay, let's try the next example. The next example says a 1/4 inch, 1/4 of an inch cube was used to fill the prism. So we have now a 1/4 inch. Those little dice per se are a 1/4 of an inch, and they're going to fill up this prism. Okay, this is a different shipping company maybe that wants to fill up this box. How many 1/4 inch cubes will it take to fill the prism? So we have to do the same idea that we did before. So let's start with that question. So we're working on this question right here. We'll get to the other questions in a minute. I'm going to change colors for this one. Okay, so let's take a look. A 1/4 inch, that means there are 4 in every inch. Okay, so this one's going to be easy. I'm going to write my numbers over here. There are going to be 4 along here because for every inch there are 4 of them. So there's going to be 4. I'm going to do my length, my width, and my height again. And then we said the width, there's going to be 4 cubes because that's 1 inch. Okay, so I'm going to have 4 in here, and in my 1/2 inch, I am going to have 2 quarters and a half. So here's 4 and 2. I'm going to have 6 going this way. 6 for the length. And then, oh, this one's going to be harder. Okay, so there's 4 for every one, so 4 in each of those 3. 4 times 3 is 12. And then there's 3 quarters here, so that would be 12 and 3, so we would have 15. Now this, I'm going quickly, and I know it's tricky, but if you're unsure, please put it in your ISN. I'm kind of curious to see what questions we get from this, and seeing if there's a different way to do it, or things like that. So I do have other ways. I just want to see what you can come up with for your questions on what you would like me to clarify in class. Okay. So I found how many cubes, so I can have 6 of these new 1/4 inch cubes. I can have 6 cubes here, 4 cubes here, and then 15 going up high. So we want to know how many cubes. Okay, so we're going to need to multiply. 6 times 4 times 15. I'm going to write that 6 times 4 times 15. It's going to give me the cubes. I'm going to work that out on here. Let me scoot it over here so you can see it. 6 times 4 times 15, oops, let's start over. 6 times 4 times 15 is 360 cubes. Alright, so 360 cubes will fit in there. I'm going to go ahead and label that so I don't forget. Those are just the cubes. Okay, we want to know the volume of the prism. Well, to find volume, remember, we're working on this one now. Volume is length times width times height. Now we want to find it at the prism, okay? Not how many cubes with the cubes on the top. We want to find it for the prism. So let's find the length is 1.5 times the width, and the width is 1 right here. Excuse me. And the height is 3 3/4. All right, now we need to multiply them. On my calculator, it's I can't do fractions, so I'm going to just work it out. I'll just work it out. I do have a calculator that will do fractions, but it doesn't help my brain to put it into a calculator, so I'm going to work it out. Okay, I know 1.5 times 1 is 1.5, so I'm really only going to do 1.5 times 3 3/4. Cool. All right, our first step is to change it into mixed numbers. So 2 times 1 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. And 4 times 3 is 12. 12 plus 3 is 15 fourths. Okay, now to multiply, I need to recall, how do I multiply fractions? Let me see. I believe that when I multiply fractions, my brain tells me I'm supposed to multiply the numerator and then the denominator. Yeah, I think that's right. Okay. So 3 times 15, I think of a clock and go 15 minutes, 15 minutes, and 15 minutes. That makes 45. And 2 times 4 is 8. Just thinking ahead there. Now I need to simplify, so I'm going to do 45 divided by 8. Now 6 is 48, so it must be 5. That would be 40. All right, and I'm going to leave it in fraction form because that's what it gives us here. So I'm going to have 5 and 5/8. All right, inches, and remember volume is cubed because we're fitting cubes inside. So there's our volume. So I'm gonna write these answers over here so I don't get lost. So 360 cubes, 5 and 5/8 inches cubed is our volume of the prism. Now, how is the number of cubes related to the volume? Well, I know that the volume is equal to the number of cubes times the volume of one cube. So the number of cubes times the volume of one of those 1/4 inch cubes. Okay, so let's see if this number should be equal to 360 times the volume of just one cube, because we have 360 of those one things. So we do that 360 times. Okay, so first I'm going to mark this off here. First I want to find the volume of one cube. So I'm going to write that volume of one cube. Okay, so it's a 1/4 inch length times a 1/4 inch width times a 1/4 inch height. Length times width times height equals volume. I really should have wrote that first, but I didn't, so I'm just going to remind myself what it means. Okay, so remember when I multiply fractions, I just multiply the numerator and multiply the denominator. Okay, so I'm going to do these first two, and then I'll do this one next. 1 times 1 is 1. 4 times 4 is 16. So I have 1/16 times 1/4. So I combine these two to get this, and I brought this guy over. Totally disorganized here. Okay, so 1 times 1 is 1. 16 times 4, 6 times 4 is 24. 4 times 1 is 4, 5, 6. So we have 1/64 inch cubed. This is the volume of one cube. One tiny little cube is 1/64 of an inch cubed. Okay, now if I take this times how many cubes there are, because I have this cube, I have 360 times. This cube is in there 360 times. I should get the same volume. Let's double check. Okay, so I have 360. I'm going to make it a fraction, so I'm multiplying fractions here. Over 1 times 1/64. Okay, that's going to leave me with 360 over 64. I can simplify, I can keep simplifying down, or I can divide. I've already tried the division over here on this problem. I'm going to try simplifying first, and then we'll divide. So I can see that they're both even, so I'm going to divide by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 36 divided by 2 is 18. Let me see. 30 divided by 2 would be 15. And then 6 divided by 2 would be 3. 15 and 3 is 18. And then add my 0. Still both even, so I'm going to divide by 2. 32 divided by 2, I know is 16. 18 divided by 2 is 9. 0. Oh, still even. I'm going to divide by 2 again. Okay, 16 divided by 2 is 8. 90 divided by 2 is 45. And now I have to divide. We have nothing in common. Okay, so I take 45 divided by 8. This looks like the problem we did before. Over here, 5 and 5/8 inches cubed. So it does relate in that, the number of cubes times the volume of one cube is going to give me the volume of the whole prism. Okay, if I started here and I did 360 divided by 64, I would still get the same answer. It just would be a little harder to start because I don't know that 8 or 5 times 64 would get me close. All right, that's our lesson for the day. If you have any questions, put them in your ISN and we'll talk about them in class.